Welcome to session 21 of EE203. Today we'll discuss about sinusoidal steady state analysis, something we already looked at in the past, but we'll look at it in a little more detail. In the earlier lectures, we saw how two-port networks work. Two-port networks are a special case of transfer functions. And then we looked at magnetic coupling. Now I'll come back to our earlier course flow where we were talking about Laplace transforms and network functions. And I'll talk about sinusoidal steady state analysis today. Recall that in the earlier session that was session 9, we had talked about finding the response of a series RL network to a cosine input. And now that you have given your midterm exams, I'm sure you're quite comfortable with this. Just to recap, you have a R and a L in series, and the Laplace transform impedance is given by R for the resistance. For the inductor, it becomes S times L. And my input voltage is a cos omega t, a cosine input. That's my forcing function. And what we had done was, in order to find out the current in the circuit, we wanted to find what is the current as the response to a cosine voltage input. We said that the current is the voltage, the transform voltage times the transform admittance, right? Because I is G times V. So the voltage is given by S by S square plus omega square, which is the Laplace transform of cos omega t. And we know that the impedance is R plus Ls in series. So the admittance is 1 by R plus Ls. So the current was given by this. And in fact, we had said at that time that using the natural response of the system, you can tell that the output is going to be of the form exponential of minus RT over L times there is also a cosine function, and we said that we'd have to do a convolution operation. Instead, what we did was we went ahead and solved it using the method of residues, where we said that the current is 1 plus R by Ls into S by S square plus omega square can be split into, the denominator can be split into three terms, S plus R by L, then there is S plus j omega and S minus j omega, which forms your S square plus omega square. And therefore, using method of residues, we then said that I'll get the 1 over L common prefactor out, and the rest of the terms can have some factors A, B, and C, which are called the residues. We calculated the residues by plugging in the values. In one case, you have to put S as minus R by L. In one case, you have to put S as minus j omega. And in one case, S is equal to plus j omega. And by plugging these values into the original transfer function, we were able to get the residues, and we calculated that. We then said that now that we have three terms, A, B, and C, we said that for the case of a steady state response, a sinusoidal steady state response, we said we can ignore this term because the denominator S plus R by L will lead to a response given by e to the minus RT over L, right? I'll write it down here. So A is going to be of the form e to the minus RT over L. And we know that since it's a decaying exponential, then in steady state it's not going to exist, because in steady state it indicates that you're taking t as t tends to infinity. So this term vanishes. This is a transient term. Okay, and what we are interested in is steady state. For the sake of steady state, then we are only interested in B and C. Okay, and then we solved it. And after solving for B and C, we came up with this expression. We said we had to check the algebra. That algebra has since been checked. So let's erase this. This is done. And what we found was that the answer is equal to uh, R over R square plus omega square L square cos omega t plus omega L times something and sine omega t. And we kind of ended over here. We said this is the time domain response. Okay. If you want to take it one step further, you could have simplified the expression by noting that the denominators are common on both sides, r square plus omega L square, and the numerators are individual factors of the denominator. And you know the basic expression that if I have any function of the form a square plus b square is equal to 1, then I can always write a is equal to cos theta, b is sin theta, and theta is equal to what? Sin by cos is b over a, so theta is tan inverse b over a. Right? This is just a standard trigonometric identity. Using this identity, I could have said that I have r by r square plus omega square L square can be sin theta, or it would be cos theta. You can consider this as cos theta, this as sin theta. Therefore, you can say that sin square theta would be omega square L square, and cos theta would be uh, r square by the denominator. And you would actually have to take root of r square plus omega square L square outside as a common factor, and you would be left with two terms, r by root of r square plus omega square L square and omega L by whatever. So I think you know this basic algebra, and therefore you could have represented this as some cos theta, not the entire term. Let me maybe make it clearer. So I could have written a, which is cos theta over here, is equal to r by root of r square plus. See, remember that a square plus b square has to be equal to 1, right, for this to work. So if a is cos theta and b sin theta, a has to be r divided by root of this. Then I can say that a square becomes r square divided by r square plus omega square L square. And similarly, b will become omega L divided by root of, okay. So if I were to do that, then basically this is r square plus omega square L square. This is the root of that. So I have to take one square root out, okay, and that's this denominator over here. One square root came out. The remaining term without that square root is the cos theta term, and here it is sin theta. And then you're left with cos omega t sin theta plus sin omega t, cos omega t cos theta plus sin omega t sin theta, that is cos of omega t minus theta, right? And theta is tan inverse omega L divided by R. So this is the final answer. Now, what's interesting about this answer, because I did not simplify it last time, I stopped over here, and the final answer is this. And what makes it interesting is that your input voltage is cos omega t, and your current response is also cos omega t with some prefactor, and there is an additional phase term theta, where theta is tan inverse omega L by R. Now why I say this is interesting is, supposing you had this RL circuit and we looked at step response, impulse response, and various things like that. So if my input were a step response, that it's at 0 it becomes 1, then what happens to my output? If the voltage is a step response, then in the output you'll notice that when you apply a voltage, initially the inductor is like a short open circuit, and the entire voltage drop is across the inductor, and gradually the current increases, and finally the inductor becomes a short circuit, and the entire voltage is across the resistor, and the current is equal to V by R. So the current goes up and becomes some constant value. So if this is the input, this is the current I of t, this is input V of t. But in the case of a cosine function, what's happening is that if my input is a cosine function, then my output is also a cosine function, except that it is shifted by some phase. So there is some phase difference. It could have been like this, but it's exactly the same function, okay? When I say phase difference, what I mean is this value theta. So if my input is of the form cos omega t, the output is also of the form cos omega t. Only difference is that there is a phase shift of theta and some scaling factor, right? Because the input is a voltage, output is a current. I mean, what we are calculating, the driving point current, then uh, there is going to be voltage divided by resistance, and the square root of R square is like a resistance term. So that's there. I mean, that's expected. The very important point to keep in mind is in the case of sinusoidal or sinusoidal functions, the waveform is always sinusoidal in the entire circuit. We'll prove that now. Why is that the case? So let's go back to our Laplace transforms. In general, we say that a sinusoid function, the word sinusoid refers to either sine omega t or cos omega t. Okay. Usually, sometimes people get confused when they think about sinusoid. They think sinusoid is sine, but sinusoid is a general term. It means sine or cosine. Both are encompassed under sinusoid. Now, in general, like we solved in the earlier case, we said the current is some admittance times the voltage, right? That's what we did on top here. We said I is some admittance. So let's write it out. This is Y of S and this is V of S. So current is some admittance times some voltage. Transform admittance, transform voltage. So I is Y of S into V of S. And let's assume the V of t is some sinusoid, which is of the form V1 is a constant times sine omega t, right? That's my input voltage. I'm defining it. So let's assume it's this. The problem we solved just now was for cosine omega t. Instead, now I'm using sine omega t for generality. Then my transform would be what? Y of S into what is the transform of V1 sine omega t? Sine omega t is omega by omega square plus s square. That's what you see here. Omega over omega square plus s square times V1, which is a constant, and y of s, which is the same thing over here. So this can be written as omega times V1 into y of s by s square plus omega square is again split into s plus j omega, s minus j omega. Now following the same method of residues, I know that this current expression can be split into some residue divided by s plus j omega, which is this term, some residue over s minus j omega, which accounts for this term, and then the y of s itself could be some function, right? And for example, in the case of our RL circuit, y of s was 1 plus r by ls. So then that would also be split, right? Over here, 1 plus r over ls came up as a by s plus r by l, right? So that's the corresponding term of the impedance, of the admittance. So similarly, for in a general circuit, right, we did RL on top. Any general circuit, some RLC circuit having many inductors, capacitors, resistors, doesn't matter. Some complex circuit has an admittance function given by y of s, and that y of s can then be split into a bunch of residues, C1 by s plus P1. P1 is just stands for the pole, okay? P stands for pole because you know that the values at which the denominator goes to 0 is called a pole. So the various poles are here, s plus p2 and until s plus pn. So some function of poles. The admittance is now resolved into that. So if we follow the method of residues, like what we did earlier, then what would I do? First, I want to find the value of a. So to find the value of a, I should multiply the I of s with s plus j omega so that this s plus j omega term is cancelled out. And once this s plus j omega term is cancelled out, I should put in the value s is equal to minus j omega into the remaining terms. So the remaining terms should have the value s is equal to minus j omega. So what will happen if I do that? If I put s is equal to minus j omega, then in I of s, omega v1 is just a constant, so that comes out. Y of s can be written as y of minus j omega because I put s is equal to minus j omega for solving this one. So I've replaced s is minus j omega. This has become y of minus j omega. The denominator will be what over here? S plus j omega term is already cancelled out, right? We removed it. So you're left with minus j omega minus 2j omega. So this is the method of residues. Now, if I want to find the residue for B, what would I do? Can you try it out? omega v1 is the constant which is outside. I have to put, for the case of B, I have to put S is equal to j omega, right? And so it becomes y of j omega divided by 2j omega. Now, like I talked about in the earlier case, when I did the RL circuit, what did I say? I'm having some term due to plus j omega, which is calculated, some term due to minus j omega, some term due to plus j omega, and finally I have the other terms which from the admittance, which are the natural response of the system, right? And we said, what is the specialty of the natural response? If I have a system of resistors, inductors, and capacitors, I am always going to have a transient response which is exponentially decaying. Okay, this is a fact, because if I have R, L, and C, I can never generate power in the circuit. It has to always exponentially decay. Therefore, what I can tell is, in steady state, I am neglecting the S plus R by L term in the previous example. The very same thing I can say about this new case, where when I have split this into these many terms, the remaining terms will have a natural response which tends to zero in steady state. All of them have to be exponentially decaying. It's going to be, what is the value of this? Exponential of minus P1t. This is exponential of minus P2t, exponential of minus Pnt. So all these terms are going to vanish. I'm only going to be left with these two terms for the steady state analysis. This is the critical point. Now, we have already had some experience with rectangular polar forms, and you know that if I take any complex number of the form x plus jy, why am I talking about complex numbers? Well, two things. I have s plus j omega, s minus j omega, which are complex numbers. In addition, I also know that s itself is a complex frequency, right? S is given by sigma plus j omega. So s is a complex number. So when I have any complex numbers, that means I'm talking about the y of minus j omega and y of j omega. If I want to evaluate these expressions, then this expression is going to be some function of uh, real and imaginary terms. So if I have any complex number of x plus jy, I can express it in exponential form as r into e power j phi, where x is equal to r cos theta phi, y is r sin phi, and r is given by root of x square plus y square, and phi is tan inverse y by x, right? This is a very simple identity. We are quite familiar with it. This one and this one. So the relationship is x is r cos phi. It's just a way of rewriting, right? And I think there is no doubt about this. So the reason I'm doing this is I want to further evaluate my terms, right? I started with I of s. In general, I'm saying I of s is y into v. And then I said that v is a sinusoid. So I took the example of sine omega t. I found out that sine omega t is omega by s square plus omega square. Then I used the method of residues to split this, and I've got this whole term. And I said in this term, all of these are neglected because all of them are going to exponentially decay. I'm only interested in A and B terms. For the A term, I have omega into V1 by minus 2j omega, which are all constants, into y of minus j omega. And in the second case, it's y of plus j omega. So this is the only two unknowns left that I have to solve, right? So to solve this, I'm making use of this identity that any complex number such as y of minus j omega can be written as some magnitude term into some phase term. Okay, and the magnitude is root of x square plus y square, and the phase term is tan inverse y by x. It's just a mathematical transformation. Therefore, I can say that y of j omega, which is written over here, can be written as some magnitude term. So I've written it as y1 subscript 1 times e power j phi, right? Some magnitude into some phase. Now I know that y of minus j omega, because I'm replacing plus j with minus j, I know it is exactly the complex conjugate, right? Because I know from real numbers that from complex numbers that a plus ib is the complex conjugate of a minus ib, right? Just put a star. And because I know this formula for complex conjugates, I know that if y of j omega is given by y1 into e power j phi, then y of minus j omega is the same magnitude, but the phase is with a minus sign. So it's just reversed. So it's the complex conjugate. Okay. And in case you don't know why, it's very straightforward. If I replace x plus jy with x minus jy, then this tan inverse term will become tan inverse of minus y by x. And therefore tan inverse of minus something is minus tan inverse of the same thing. And so that minus sign comes out. So it's as simple as that. Now if I want to continue with my solution, then I could write that if I'm putting y of j omega as some magnitude into phase term, then I can bring the magnitude. Both of them have the same magnitude, right? y1 mod y1. So this is common. So now I can simplify the expression saying it is v1 into magnitude of y1 by 2j. Remember the expression I'm dealing with is here. This is the expression I'm dealing with. And what I'm saying is that I have only these two terms. So for a by s plus jw and b over s minus jw. And I said the b term is y of j omega is given by y1 into e power j phi. So that's y1 outside into e power j phi by s minus j omega, which was the b term, minus e power minus j phi by s plus j omega. Okay, because a had a minus in the denominator, so that became a minus sign over here. And now when I have something like this, you can quickly see that this will work out to be v1 y1 into sine omega t plus phi. Okay. So that's easy to see. You can, if I take the inverse transform, this is I of s, right? If I take the inverse transform, then this is just a constant, and I have to only take the transform of the inner part. So what's the transform of the inner part? If I do I of t, it's v1 y1 over 2j into e power j phi into e power j omega t, right? Because the denominator says s minus j omega, so the numerator is plus j omega t. And similarly for the other one, it's minus e power minus j phi, and this is minus j omega t, so I'll write it as plus omega t. And similarly this I can write as j into phi plus omega t. I can take the j common outside, so let's remove this. Now you can quickly see, right, what's going on. So basically this is e power x minus e power minus x, e power jx minus e power minus jx, so that's like 2j sine x, right? So the 2j and the 2j will cancel out, and I'm left with sine of omega t plus phi. So what I have proved here basically is that no matter what is the transfer function, that means no matter what is the circuit you have inside, right? What is the transfer function? The admittance function. In the previous case, I showed that if I take a series RL circuit, then for a series RL circuit, I showed that if my input is a cos omega t, my output is going to be cos omega t minus theta. Some phase difference, but it is still going to be cos omega t. What I have proven here is in general, a general case, a more stronger proof that no matter what is my admittance function, y of s can be anything. It can be RLC, multiple inductors, capacitors, resistors with series combination, shunt combination, T network, pi network, doesn't matter. Whatever circuit of passive elements I have, R, L, and C, if I apply a sinusoidal input voltage, omega sine omega t, my current will be sinusoidal omega t only with some phase difference. Okay, so this is a very important point. This is important because it makes our analysis very simple, and we will see that shortly why. So let's take an example. Whatever we solved, just now with the series RL circuit. If my input is V1 sine omega t, and I have R, and then I have the L, and I'm trying to find out what is I of t. So from my Laplace transforms, I know that the transform admittance is 1 by R plus SL. But now, according to this formula over here, I need to find out what is the magnitude of y1 at s is equal to j omega, right? Because that's how we got these residues A and B. I said A is the residue at S is equal to minus j omega and B is the residue at S is equal to plus j omega. So from the residue of y is equal to j omega, I was able to convert it into the form y1 into e power j phi. So I'm putting S is equal to j omega because I'm trying to find out what is y1 at j omega, and that gives me 1 by r plus j omega L. I mean 1 over r plus j omega L. And what is the magnitude of this? 1 by root of r square plus omega square L square. Therefore, my current response is what? V1, which is the V1 magnitude over here, into V1 divided by r square plus omega square L square into sine omega t plus phi, right? Only thing left to do is find out what is the value of this phi. We said that y of j omega is e power y1 into e power j phi, and what is the phi over here? Phi is the tan inverse term, right, of the complex, some imaginary number divided by some real number. So in this case, and when do I evaluate phi? Phi exists when y is equal to j omega. So by putting s is equal to j omega, that means I'm making y at j omega. I found out this is the term and this is the magnitude of it. Therefore, the phase is going to be equal to what? Y of j omega is equal to y1 into e power j phi, and the LHS, which is y of j omega, is 1 by r plus j omega L. That's what I wrote over here. 1 by r plus SL became 1 by r plus j omega L. And this can be written as the denominator is some magnitude term r square plus omega square L square under root times e power tan inverse omega L by r. Or that's equal to, if I take the denominator term on top, e power minus j times tan inverse omega L by r. That means what is the value of phi? Phi is minus tan inverse omega L divided by r. The point is that we solved this expression using Laplace transforms. We first initially took r plus ls, then we transformed the sine omega t into omega by s square plus omega square. We used the method of residues, we split it, we found the inverse Laplace transform. But for the special case of sinusoidal voltages, you do not need to do that. So for the case of sinusoidal voltages, you can directly apply the formula that the current is whatever is your original voltage, V1 sine omega t, times some magnitude term evaluated at j omega, and there is some extra phase term which is tan inverse of omega L divided by r. So by just inspection, you can directly tell the answer without having to do all these calculations that we did earlier. So we solved this whole thing. We said you can either use convolution, you can use method of residues, all of this. But for the case of sinusoidal steady state analysis, you can bypass all that procedure. And therefore, the conclusion is that all you need to do is, for a sinusoidal steady state, for sinusoidal forcing functions, all you need to do is replace S with j omega and skip the Laplace transform procedure so that your calculation becomes much faster. So in the exam, if you have a question which asks you that I have a sinusoidal voltage or a sinusoidal current, find out what is the corresponding voltage or current for a driving point case. Very straightforward. You can like almost mentally solve the problem. We'll look at some examples in the next session. This session was mostly about showing how Laplace transform reduces uh, to a very simple algebraic calculation for sinusoidal steady states. And then in the next class, we'll look at some more detailed examples. Okay, thank you.